What has been the creepiest encounter you've ever had with a stranger? My son and I were at a packed farmer's market. I think he was around 10 or 11 years old. At one point, he walked ahead of me. I was never more than 20-30 feet away and kept him in clear sight so we wouldn't lose each other in the crowd. I noticed a man lingering at several of the same stalls my son stopped at. Then I saw him start talking to my kid. That set off alarm bells, but I was also curious. I didn't rush in yet. I'm a big guy, 6'3", about 260 lbs. I can handle myself. I definitely had the upper hand over this creep. If he tried to grab my son, I was ready to charge him like an enraged silverback. He kept tailing my boy and started glancing around, clearly checking whether anyone was watching him. I closed the distance a little more, and he still hadn't spotted me. At that point, it was reasonable to assume he was a predator, but I didn't want to cause a scene if he was just some awkward dude trying to be friendly. Then he put his arm around my son's shoulder. I dropped my voice as low and loud as it gets and boomed my son's name. My kid whipped around, thinking he was in trouble because I used my scary dad voice. I was now 1 meter behind them, towering over both. The guy bolted. The whole thing lasted maybe a minute and a half, 2 at most. Later, I saw him jump into a pickup with out-of-state plates. That monster had driven across state lines to try to snatch a child, and that day, the universe put my son right in his path. My boy was never truly in danger because I caught it, but I could easily have been distracted for that tiny window of time. This one really stuck with me because I haven't had outright terrifying encounters otherwise. Most just made me uneasy. This one scared me in a different way. I was with my then-girlfriend and 2 of our friends who were sisters. We were in our mid-20s walking through an outlet mall. I was trailing about 10 feet behind the 3 of them, so to anyone else, it probably didn't look like I was with them. They passed a bench where a white guy in a long black trench coat was sitting. No other distinguishing features. For some reason, he caught my eye the moment they approached, so I kept watching him. The instant the girls walked past and could no longer see him, he lifted a police badge, held it close to his chest like he was hiding it from everyone else, and tracked them with his eyes the entire time they were in front of him. He lowered it once they were a couple meters past. I don't know if he stopped because he saw me watching or not. It doesn't sound that scary in retrospect, but the only thought in my head was, this guy is working up the nerve to flash a fake badge at women one day, and he's going to hurt someone. I don't know if I got bad vibes first, or if I'm remembering it worse now, but it rattled me hard. I really hope he was just a weirdo and not someone with evil intentions. In high school, I was friends with a kid who lived in my neighborhood. We hung out a lot. He ended up owing some guy money for weed. One day, I was walking to the corner store to grab a soda. As I entered the parking lot, a huge dude came out of the store, locked eyes with me, and walked straight over. "You're friends with so-and-so. I've seen you together. He owes me. Tell me where he lives. I need to talk to him." I answered, "He lives that way," and vaguely pointed in the completely wrong direction, far from the actual house. Then I said, "That's all you need to know." He clearly didn't like that. He went silent for a few seconds, so I figured the conversation was over. The moment I turned my head to leave, he sucker punched me harder than I've ever been hit in my life. I have no idea how I stayed conscious. I staggered out into the street, head exploding with pain, vision flashing red and purple, ears ringing with a deep, repetitive tone. Luckily, no cars were coming as I stumbled blindly into traffic. I'm not a fighter. I was terrified, hurt, and just wanted out, so I walked away. As I left, I heard him yell, "That's what you get for running your smart mouth. Tell your buddy to call me." Looking back, I can see how my wording might have come off as cocky. I've always struggled with social cues and saying things the right way. Sometimes I blurt out stuff that sounds rude when I don't mean it. I was also nervous and just trying to end the conversation fast. Or maybe the guy was looking for any excuse to take out his frustration over the debt, and I was a convenient target. Thankfully, I never saw him again. The friend who owed the money apologized profusely when he found out, and even bought me a big bag of weed as a peace offering. I don't know if that guy ever caught up with him. I stopped hanging out with him shortly after. It wasn't the first mess I got dragged into because of him, but it was the one that finally made me realize I needed to choose my friends more carefully. Some people, even with good hearts, are just magnets for drama and trouble. If you don't want that in your life, you let them go their own way and keep your distance. In high school, my 2 buddies and I were walking along the roadside toward a McDonald's. It was pitch black, but about 20 feet ahead on the other side of the street, we started hearing a lighter clicking repeatedly, clearly aimed at us. We whispered about it, but kept walking, hoping to pass by. A homeless man suddenly stepped out of the darkness pretty fast, saying, "Hey, I know you see me." We tried to keep moving, and he said, I just need money. We kept walking until he yelled that we didn't want to die over a few bucks. We froze and turned to face him. I kind of took the lead, telling him we'd give him whatever we had and to calm down. We pulled out our wallets, handed over the few dollars we had, and he sat down in the grass clutching the money and crying because he was starving. I had kept a $5 bill, so I pulled it out and gave it to him, telling him there was a McDonald's right there and to go get himself food. He kept sobbing and praying, "Lord, help me." We decided to leave him there. All I could say was, "God bless you," and we walked on. That really opened my eyes. The opposite happened at a Taco Bell on a road trip with friends. I went back to the counter for more food and a guy approached me. He looked exactly like the creepy stereotype you picture and couldn't stop stuttering, visibly nervous. He kept repeating something was wrong with my truck and asking me to come look at it. I told him I was probably the last person there who could help, but he insisted, "Just come take a quick look, I don't know what's wrong." I had zero intention of going, but I glanced at my friends and they were all shaking their heads. One of them said loudly, "My name, don't do it." I nodded to let them know I got the message. When I looked back, the guy was already almost out the door and speed walking to his car. It still gives me chills thinking how real that was, and how easily my life could have ended in an instant if I hadn't known better. I'm not sure what the exact lesson is. Some people are just down on their luck and feel they have no options, and some people want to do horrific things to others. I guess it's always safer to assume the latter. I used to work as a cable tech for Comcast in a pretty busy metro area. Because I handled escalated jobs and such, I also got sent to the wealthier side of the county, million-dollar homes and up. I got a ticket for a cable box that wasn't working, and there was a note that the customer needed a form to change the account holder name. That's something you can easily do at a retail store, but Comcast strictly forbids techs from carrying or processing those forms. There's a whole procedure. They want ID checked and signatures witnessed in person, and they simply don't want field techs involved. Still, I flagged it with my supervisor, who confirmed no form for me and that I should tell the customer to go to a store in person. Cool. It was an afternoon call, so I finished my route and eventually arrived. She lived in a condo building I was in all the time. The cheapest units there were probably $800,000, but it was built in the 60s and the wiring was awful. Trying to push digital signal over coax designed for 1960s analog TV is a nightmare. Anyway, I knock, she opens. Seems nice enough. I step inside. From where I'm standing, I can see the cable box. I start my usual spiel and she immediately interrupts asking for the account holder change form. I politely explain that even though I asked my supervisor, we're not allowed to provide it and she'll have to visit a store. She absolutely loses it on me. Starts screaming that I have no heart, I'm an idiot, I'm worthless, I should be fired. She's yelling that her abusive ex-boyfriend is still on the account, and by not helping, I'm basically beating her like he did. She says he's going to kill her, and it'll be my fault. She's in my face, inches away, screaming all this. I'm in a tough spot. I'm a stocky 5'11" guy who climbed poles for a living back then. Pretty muscular. She looked like a 90 lb blonde crackhead in the middle of a binge, and we're alone in her condo. Anything she claimed right then, I'd have almost no way to defend myself against. I'm thinking this woman could literally ruin my entire life by saying I hit her or worse, and she'd already shown she was fully capable of going there. To buy time, I start checking the dead cable box and discover it's simply completely unplugged. I check the signal, normal for that building's garbage wiring, and plug it back in. The whole time, she never stops screaming every insult under the sun, and I have no idea what to do. While I work, I keep my body turned sideways so I can always see her, because I'm genuinely worried she'll grab a kitchen knife. I power the box on and, miracle, it works perfectly. Nothing was actually broken. She then screams she's calling Comcast to get me fired, storms into another room and grabs her phone. I see that as my only window and silently head for the door. I'd locked it behind me when I came in. I carefully unlock it, ease the door open, slip out, close it quietly, and sprint for the stairs. She was on the 14th floor, so I ran down 2 flights and took the elevator from there. I called my supervisor from the van to report that I'd bailed and explain what happened, so there was a record of me being on the phone at the exact time she called in. Luckily, nothing ever came of it for me. Oddly, I got sent back to her building twice more while I was still a tech. Both times she didn't remember me at all and just let me do my job and ignored me until I left. But that day was hands down the scariest customer encounter I ever had on that job. In 2018, I was living in Bari, southern Italy. Almost every warm Tuesday night, we'd go to a bar called Ponerte because they hosted beer pong tournaments. One night, A friend and I decided to bring our guitars so everyone could sing along and have a great time. At first, all our friends gathered around, plus a bunch of Italian students. It looked like it was going to be an awesome night, but about 30 minutes in, two big guys in black leather jackets showed up with two stunning women and came straight over to our group. They started demanding we play some Italian songs we obviously had never heard of, so we tried to explain. They understood. We spoke decent Italian by then, but they didn't care. They got more and more agitated and angry as people drifted away. 5 or 10 minutes later, it was basically just the four of them trying to impress what I hope were their dates, my friend and me. We overheard enough to suspect they were some kind of low-level mafia guys who had a deal with the bar. Being possibly mobbed up didn't mean they'd hurt us, but it sure didn't calm our nerves. At one point, one of them handed me his phone to try to recognize a song playing on YouTube instead of just shouting titles. I immediately realized it was a simple chord progression, and the second my friend and I started playing it, they lit up, started singing the lyrics, dancing with their dates, got so happy they went inside and bought a round of shots for all 6 of us. My friend and I looked at each other like, hope this is tequila because we know damn well we can't say no. We downed them, hugged it out, and they left grinning. For a solid minute, we thought we were done for. When I was living with my grandma so my parents could sort out their divorce stuff, I was in 3rd grade, 7 or 8 years old. I'd get off the school bus in her neighborhood and walk to her house. If she wasn't home, I'd go to a sweet older couple down the street who watched me until she got back. The day the bus pulled away, I noticed a homeless-looking man wandering the area a short distance away. He looked like he hadn't showered in years. Torn clothes, matted hair, probably mid-40s. Definitely didn't belong in the neighborhood. He locked eyes with me and stared in a way that made me shake. The smile he gave me felt wrong deep in my gut. He waved. I waved back out of reflex and started walking to Grandma's. I thought that was it until I heard footsteps behind me. I looked. He was following me now. He started calling out, "Hey little girl, wait up, you're really pretty, what's your name?" I knew it was bad, so I took off running and crying toward the house. I got there, pounded, and kicked the door for Grandma to let me in. I didn't have a key yet. No answer. Everything silent. I turned to run to the neighbors, but he'd already caught up and grabbed my arm. I screamed and cried for help as loud as I could. He tried to shush me and cover my mouth, but I bit his hand as hard as I could. It was disgusting. He yelled in pain. I broke free and bolted to the neighbors. Thankfully, they opened fast. I threw myself at the lady and sobbed while trying to explain. Her husband went outside looking for the guy. Police searched later. Grandma got home and held me crying, thanking God I was safe and hadn't been taken or worse. That moment terrified me and left some lasting trauma. I'd flinch if anyone touched me unexpectedly for a long time. A few years ago, I was in an art supply store I'd been to a million times alone and noticed a guy showing up in every single aisle I went to. I thought maybe coincidence, so I tested it by randomly switching aisles. Seconds later, there he was right behind me. I got in line to pay, and he got directly behind me, way too close, staring down at me. I tried to create space. He just closed it again. When I got to the register, I thought about asking the employee to walk me to my car, but he was still stuck helping someone, so I figured I had time to get out into my vehicle. Before I even left the store, I called my dad, a retired cop, and told him what was happening. I glanced back. The guy had abandoned the line and was now walking toward me across the parking lot. I looked around, saw other people nearby, turned, stared him dead in the eye, and said loudly into the phone, "This creep is literally following me." That got attention. He immediately looked away and veered off. I basically ran to my car, jumped in, and told Dad I was locked inside. While I sat there shaking, I looked in the rear view and saw the guy walk behind my car and get into a vehicle one space over. When I pulled out, I memorized make, model, color, and noticed Texas plates. This happened out of state. It still scares me to talk about it because he didn't even try to hide that he had targeted me for something. When I was 12, I was home alone, chilling and listening to music in the back room. I started hearing footsteps upstairs and figured someone came home early and I hadn't heard the door. About 15 minutes later, I'm heading downstairs and there's a 16 or 17-year-old guy in the entryway, just as shocked to see me as I am him. We both freeze. He's obviously bigger and holding 2 bags full of my dad's stuff. Finally, he bolts out the front door. That's when fight or flight kicked in, and instead of calling the police like a normal person, this chubby little 12-year-old girl chased him. If he'd kept running, he would have gotten away clean, but he went around the side of the house to hop on a bike and tried to pedal across the lawn. I tackled him off the bike and tried to hold him while he started swinging at me. I swung back, he clocked me in the eye, and eventually broke free. That's when everything went blank and the fear hit. A neighbor had seen, called to check on me, and phoned the police. They never caught him. My brain blocked out the memory for 2 full years. Nobody, not even me, expected the chubby kid to fight back. Once I smashed my phone and took it to a repair shop. While they fixed it, I was using an old flip phone so I could still get calls and texts. I showed up a few minutes before they opened and waited outside. Sketchy part of town. I flipped open the phone to text someone from work, and while I'm typing, a guy rides by on a bike yelling, "Cell phone! She's got a cell phone!" I figured he was just mocking my ancient phone, so I grumbled something like, "Shut up." He slammed on the brakes, hopped off, and got right in my face. Started ranting that everyone's always taking his picture, he can't have peace. Why can't I leave him alone? I noticed he was wearing only one shoe. He had me pinned against the wall. Store still closed, nobody else around. I tried explaining I didn't take any picture, it's just a flip phone, but he clearly wasn't all there. After what felt like forever, the shop finally opened and I ran inside. I started crying before I could even ask for my phone. The tech locked the door again and walked me to my car. Really kind guy. I was a 21-year-old woman in a home goods store grabbing a few things when I noticed a man literally peeking at me from the end of an aisle. I ignored it at first and kept shopping, but realized he was tailing me through the entire store. Then he started calling out that I looked familiar and asked if I went to the local university. I didn't, so I said no. At that point, I was creeped out, paid, and headed to my car. I heard footsteps behind me and knew he'd followed me out. I jumped in and locked the doors fast. It was dark and I didn't realize he'd circled around the back until he banged on the passenger window. I ignored him and started the car. He ran to the driver's side, started pounding on the door, trying the handle, begging me to give him a ride. I was terrified, peeled out of the parking lot as fast as I could, and he chased the car on foot until I turned the corner. I have no idea what his plan was, but dark parking lots at night still make me nervous to this day. I was in high school working the night shift at a truck stop. One night a trucker came in and just stared at me for ages. Wherever I moved, his eyes followed. I told him if he needed anything, he had to come to the counter and ask. He just grunted and kept staring. I'm not small. Back then I played football, wrestled, ran track, and hit the gym 6 days a week. I was about 190 lbs of pure muscle and teenage hormones, but the vibe this guy gave off actually made me nervous. I called my coworker and said I'd be in the walk-in freezer for a bit, so I spent a long time restocking coolers and fridges, then hit the bathroom. The second I walked in the bathroom, the trucker jumped up, followed me in, and just stood there while I peed and washed my hands. The moment I came out, I grabbed trash bags and went straight outside to empty pump-side cans until he left. When I finally came back in, my coworker asked why that trucker had been following me around. I have no clue. He never spoke, never bought anything but fuel, just creeped me out. I've never felt that disturbed by another person. When my daughter turned 1, we took a trip to Hawaii. While we were sitting at the airport waiting to check bags, a man walked up and started commenting on how beautiful my daughter was. Okay, thanks. But he wouldn't stop. He stood over us asking her age, birthday, favorite things, where we were going, everything. I refused to answer, but he refused to leave and we were stuck. My husband came back and the guy scurried off pretty quick. I alerted airport security. They did nothing. We got to our gate and minutes later, the same man sat where he had a clear view of our daughter. If we moved seats, he repositioned himself to keep watching her. I told the gate agent, again dismissed. We boarded the plane and somehow he got on too, in a seat where he could still see her. He kept smiling at her and getting up to walk the aisle and pass by. My husband stood up. The guy came over and said in a baby voice, "I found out where you're going, didn't I?" I told a flight attendant I wasn't playing games. They forced him to switch seats and barred him from getting up again. When we landed, people were waiting for him and took him away. Security or airport staff, I don't know, but we never saw him again. I am 100% convinced our daughter would have been kidnapped or trafficked if we hadn't stayed hyper-vigilant and reported him repeatedly. That was 7 years ago, and I still remember the sheer terror.